Caleb Mercer, known to most travelers only as Red Jack, rode alone through the warm New Mexico desert, carrying little more than a bedroll, a water pouch, and the steady weight of his own tired memories. People often imagined an outlaw as loud, wild, and dangerous, but Caleb was nothing like that. He was quiet, thoughtful, and kept mostly to himself. The world had simply given him a name he did not feel he deserved, and it followed him like a long shadow for weeks. He had been moving from one lonely trail to another, avoiding towns where people whispered too much. All he wanted was to find a place where he could rest without fear of someone pointing at him or calling for help, thinking he was there to cause trouble. He never had much luck with that. Wherever he went, someone recognized the red hair that earned him his nickname, and so he would move on again. That morning, the desert felt especially calm. The sky stretched high and clear, the sun soft enough that even his horse seemed to relax. Caleb let the reins hang loose, grateful that the peaceful silence kept his thoughts from drifting to old mistakes. But as he crossed a dry wash, something caught his attention, a small shape lying near a clump of brush several yards away. His horse slowed on its own. Caleb sat still, listening. At first he thought it might be a bundle of cloth, maybe lost by a passing traveler. But the shape shifted slightly, and that tiny movement alerted him. He hesitated. He had learned long ago that stopping for strangers could cause trouble, especially in land watched over closely by its people. Still, there was something about the stillness of the figure that pulled at him. Whoever it was looked in need of help, and Caleb had never been the kind of man to ride past someone in need. He dismounted and walked toward the shape, keeping his steps slow and gentle. As he came closer, he realized it was a young woman, dressed in traditional Apache clothing. Her long dark hair spread across the ground like a flowing river. She appeared conscious, but weak, her eyes half open as if she had been trying to stay awake for a long time. Caleb stopped a few feet away, careful not to frighten her. "Ma'am," he said softly, "are you all right?" She blinked up at him, her breathing slow and shallow. She tried to speak, but only managed a whisper. Caleb knelt down, leaving enough distance to show he meant no harm. He could see now that she was exhausted, as though she had been walking far too long under the harsh sun. "I won't touch you unless you want me to," he said gently. "Do you need water?" Her eyes flickered in silent agreement. Caleb took his water pouch and placed it within her reach. She lifted a weak hand, but her strength wasn't enough. Understanding her struggle, Caleb held the pouch near her lips, careful to pour slowly so she would not choke. She drank only a little, but relief softened her features. After a moment, she managed a few words in English. "Thank you. I was lost." Her voice was soft but steady. Caleb felt a calm sense of responsibility settle over him. He did not know her story, but he knew she should not be left alone in such a place. He looked around, but the desert was quiet and empty. He knew Apache lands could be watched even when no one was seen. But leaving her here was not an option. "My camp is close," he said. "Not much, but there's shade and more water. I can help you rest." She did not show fear, only relief. With a small nod, she agreed. Caleb lifted her carefully, making sure she remained comfortable, and carried her to his horse. He placed her gently in the saddle, then walked beside the horse, guiding it slowly toward the camp he had made earlier near a few rocks that offered shade. Once they arrived, he gave her more water and offered a small piece of bread from his supplies. She ate slowly, her strength returning bit by bit. When she finally spoke, her voice held more clarity. "My name is Nalin," she said. Caleb smiled slightly. "Nice to meet you, Nalin. I'm Caleb." She studied him with calm, observant eyes, as though trying to decide whether he was someone she could trust. The quiet air between them felt peaceful rather than tense. Caleb could sense she had a strong spirit, even in her tired state. As the day passed, Nalin explained in soft, careful words that she had become separated from her family while gathering plants on the edge of their territory. She had walked far, trying to find her way back, but the heat and distance overwhelmed her. There was no mention of struggle or danger, only that she had been alone too long under the sun. Caleb listened without interrupting, nodding gently. He felt relieved that her situation did not involve anything harmful. Still, he knew he had stepped into a delicate space. He was an outsider on Apache land, and helping Nalan meant he needed to act with great respect. "You should return to your people," Caleb said. "They're probably worried." "Yes," she answered softly. "But I need help to reach them," Caleb agreed without hesitation. He could not imagine leaving her alone, and guiding her home felt like the right thing to do. As the sun lowered in the sky, they prepared to travel the next morning. Nalan rested near the fire, wrapped in a blanket Caleb had offered her. She watched him quietly, noticing the way he moved carefully, as though afraid to make any mistake. "You are kind," she said at last. "But you carry sadness." Caleb paused. Few people ever looked at him long enough to notice anything beyond his outlaw name. He shrugged lightly, unsure how to answer. "Life's been a little mixed up," he said with a faint smile. "But I'm doing my best." Nalan nodded, accepting his simple explanation. She had a calm presence that made him feel, for the first time in a long while, that he did not need to hide every part of himself. The next morning, they set out together. Caleb walked beside the horse again, letting Nalan ride to conserve her strength. She guided him with gentle directions, pointing out natural signs, small clusters of trees, a line of stones, the shape of a distant hill that showed they were on the right path. As they traveled, the air between them grew warm with quiet conversation. Nalan asked about his journey and why he traveled alone. Caleb shared only the gentlest parts of the truth, that he had been misunderstood, that people often judged him too quickly, and that he preferred the open land where no one expected anything from him. Nalan listened with deep attention, offering no judgment. She spoke about her family, her people, and the strong traditions she held close to her heart. Her words painted a picture of community and respect, a world Caleb admired but had never been part of. By midday, they reached an area where the land felt more watched. Nalan's posture straightened, and her eyes grew more alert. "We are close," she said. "My people are near." Caleb nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and hesitation. While he wanted Nalan safely home, he also knew the sight of an outsider walking with one of their women could cause misunderstanding. He hoped they would believe he had meant no harm. Not long after, a small group of Apache riders appeared on a rise ahead. They approached calmly, not with fear or anger, but with cautious interest. Their eyes moved from Nalan to Caleb and back to her. Nalin raised a hand gently. "It is all right," she said in her own language before switching to English. "This man helped me. He brought me home." The riders exchanged looks, their expressions softening. One of them nodded to Caleb, not warmly but respectfully. Caleb returned the nod, relieved at their acceptance. As they guided Nalan home, she looked back at Caleb with a grateful smile. He felt something shift quietly in his chest, a sense that helping her had brought meaning to his long, wandering days. He thought he would simply leave once she was safely returned. But the feeling he carried told him that this journey was not ending here. Something new had begun, something he could not yet name. For now, he walked calmly beside the riders, grateful that the path ahead seemed brighter than any he had walked in a long time. Caleb walked slowly behind the riders as they led Nalan back to her village. The sun hung low in the sky, turning the desert into shades of warm gold. Even though he had helped Nalan, he still felt uncertain. He was a stranger among her people, and he did not know how they would truly feel about his presence once they spoke to their elders. Still, he kept his steps steady and respectful, hoping everything would remain calm. When they reached the village, many people came out to greet Nalan. Their eyes softened with relief when they saw she was safe. She was welcomed with warm embraces and gentle words. Her family surrounded her with joy, speaking in their own language as they checked that she was all right. Caleb stood a few steps away, quietly observing, trying not to disturb the moment. After some time, Nalan turned and introduced him. "This is Caleb. He helped me when I needed help the most." The people looked at him with curious eyes. Some looked unsure, while others seemed thoughtful. They didn't rush to any judgments. But they also didn't come close. Caleb kept his hands at his sides, offering a small nod to show respect. Nalan's father, a tall man with calm eyes, stepped forward. He looked at Caleb for a long moment before speaking in simple English. "You helped my daughter. We thank you." Caleb bowed his head slightly. "I'm glad she's safe. That's all that matters." The father studied him a bit longer, as if trying to understand the kind of man he was. Then he invited Caleb to sit near the fire where the elders gathered. Caleb accepted. Though he felt nervous, he had faced many things in his life, but sitting in front of wise elders of a people he barely knew felt heavier than any journey he had taken. They asked him gentle questions: where he came from, why he traveled alone, how he found Nalan. Caleb answered honestly, choosing simple explanations. He told them he was wandering, trying to stay out of trouble, and that he had no reason to harm anyone. He shared how he found Nalan and only wanted to help her because it felt like the right thing to do. The elders listened without interrupting. Their expressions stayed calm, revealing little. At the end, one of them spoke softly. "It is rare for an outsider to offer help without expecting something in return." Caleb shrugged lightly. "I don't want anything. I just didn't want to leave her alone." His sincerity seemed to touch them. After the discussion, Nalan came to sit beside him. Though she remained quiet, her presence made him feel less alone. She looked at him with warm eyes, grateful not just for what he had done, but for how gently he had done it. As night settled over the village, the elders met privately while Caleb rested near a small fire. Nalan came and sat across from him, her expression thoughtful. "My people are deciding something important," she said. Caleb raised an eyebrow, unsure what she meant. "About me?" "Yes," she replied. "In our tradition, when someone saves another person with a pure heart, the spirits might have chosen them for something special." Caleb looked confused. "Special? What do you mean?" She looked down at her hands for a moment before speaking softly. "Some call it a sacred bond, a connection meant to bring peace and good fortune." Caleb blinked in surprise. He had not expected anything like that. He had only wanted to help her and then quietly go his own way. Now, he wasn't sure what path lay ahead. Later in the evening, the elders called both of them. People from the village gathered in a circle, watching with interest but not hostility. Caleb felt his nerves rise again, but he tried to remain calm. The oldest elder stepped forward and said, "Caleb, you acted with kindness and courage. You cared for someone who needed help. In our eyes, this is a gift of the heart." Caleb nodded respectfully, unsure what to say. The elder continued, "Nalan believes you were guided to her, and we see truth in that. Our tradition teaches that a person who saves one of our own with pure intention may be chosen as a sacred husband." Caleb's eyes widened slightly. He looked at Nalan, who met his gaze calmly. There was no fear or confusion in her eyes, only acceptance of whatever the elders decided. He swallowed, trying to speak carefully. I didn't expect anything. I only wanted her to be safe." "That is exactly why the spirits may have chosen you," the elder replied gently. Caleb stood still, letting the words sink into him. He had been alone for most of his life, misunderstood and judged by strangers. Now, another group of strangers was considering him not with suspicion, but with honor. It felt overwhelming. They did not demand anything from him. Instead, they explained that the choice was his. If he wanted to accept the bond, he would be welcomed as one of Nalan's family. If he chose to go his own way, he would still be thanked and remembered for his kindness. Caleb thought deeply. Everything he had been running from suddenly felt distant, like a fading dream. For the first time in years, he felt safe, seen, and understood. And he couldn't ignore the calm feeling that had grown inside him ever since he met Nalan. "I don't know much about sacred things," he said softly, "but I know I want to stay where I'm respected, and I feel that here." A gentle smile touched Nalan's lips, and a quiet murmur of approval passed through the crowd. The elders welcomed his decision and asked him to spend time learning their ways, understanding their values, and showing who he truly was. Caleb agreed with gratitude. He knew he had much to learn, but he was willing. Over the next few days, he walked with the men of the village, learning their customs and listening to their stories. He helped gather wood, joined in simple chores, and shared meals with the families who lived there. Everyone watched him at first, curious about how he would behave, but Caleb remained patient, gentle, and respectful. Nalin often walked beside him, explaining meanings behind certain traditions. Her voice was calm, her smile warm. Caleb found comfort in her company, and she seemed to trust him deeply. Their bond grew quietly, not forced or rushed, but naturally, like a plant finding sunlight. One afternoon, the elders asked Caleb to take part in a simple reflection ceremony. It was not a trial or test, only a moment for him to sit in silence and think about his path. Caleb sat under a tall tree, listening to the wind move through the branches. He thought about his past, how much he had carried alone, how misunderstood he had been, and how lost he often felt. Yet now, everything had shifted. He had found people who looked at him with trust instead of fear. He had found peace he didn't know he was searching for, and he had found Nalin, whose quiet strength guided him more than she realized. After the ceremony, the elders announced their decision. Caleb was welcome to join the village, fully recognized as Nalin's chosen partner, not just by tradition, but also by mutual respect and understanding. The news brought gentle smiles and soft laughter from the villagers. Everyone gathered for a small celebration, offering him warm greetings. Caleb felt his heart swell with gratitude. He had come from a life where he never fit in, and now he stood among people who accepted him freely. Nalin walked to him quietly. "You have a place here now," she said with warmth. "A home." Caleb looked at her with deep appreciation. "Thank you, Nalin, for trusting me. It was easy." She replied softly. "Your heart spoke clearly." As the sun set behind the distant hills, the village glowed with soft firelight and peaceful voices. Caleb closed his eyes for a moment, feeling a calmness he had never known before. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding from anyone. He wasn't an outlaw in this place. He was simply Caleb, a man who had helped someone in need and found a new beginning because of it. And beside him stood Nalin, the woman whose life he had touched, and who had touched his in return.